Good evening and welcome to this special show on India's defence preparedness. Abysmally low, complacent. These are just some of the words that the Estimates Committee of Parliament used to describe Modi government's defence spending. The Murli Manohar Joshi-led panel took the government to task for spending just 1.5% of the GDP on defence. This is the lowest since 1962 when the Indochina War was fought. The committee expressed serious concern with the slow rate of indigenization of weapons and berated the government for doing nothing concrete for the strategic partnership model. The panel observed that defence PSUs have not met the country's requirements. The panel also singled out the Defence Research and Development Organization, the DRDO. The committee asked for a major overhaul in functioning of the premier research organization of the country and said it was time to re-examine its contribution to our national security. Joining us now is former Army Chief General VP Malik, who led us during the Kargil War. RJ Shukla, columnist and strategic affairs expert. He's joining us. Narendra Taneja of the BJP, Sanjay Jha of the Congress, and we will also be joined by Kalikesh Singh Deo, who is a member of the Parliamentary Committee on Estimates, which has prepared this report on India's defence production and preparedness. But General Malik, I'd like to come to you first, and I'd like to begin with an excerpt from this report. The report says, in the current geopolitical scenario, a country of the size of India does not have the luxury of focusing solely on economic policies and waiting for a minimum level of prosperity before undertaking measures to be strong. Do you think, General Malik, that our defence budget, which is equivalent to 1.56% of the GDP, adequately addresses our concerns today?
No, it doesn't. Not at all. You know, it's a sad story that we are facing today as far as defense preparedness is concerned. Almost tragic story, because from 2004 to 2014, the UPA government took an almost holiday as far as procurement and modernization of the defense forces were concerned. And in the last 4 years of the NDA government, we are seeing almost the same kind of a situation. It's a really sad story, and it somehow makes me believe that the governments are not interested in ensuring security, and they are not focused on the security, while the threats to our country, both inside as well as from outside, seem to be increasing. So I totally agree with the Committee of the Estimates, which have made these observations.
Right. And Colonel Ajay Shukla, coming to you, this is a point that concerned me, and this was about capital expenditure. You have the entire defense budget, and then there is budget for procurement. The capital expenditure in the total defense budget is abysmally low, the committee observed. It has been declining steadily, and today it's 34% of the defense budget. And this is the money that is required for procurement of defense equipment, weapons, aircraft, ships, and a whole lot of other material. Do you think this is a point for worry? And do you think the government needs to explain why this capital expenditure, which is so critical, is declining?
I actually have 2 or 3 points that I think are important and relevant to this debate. First of all, the figures that this Estimates Committee has put out are absolutely incorrect, for the simple reason that they have not added the defense pensions to the defense budget. Now, the defense pensions, when the budget is presented, is a part of the defense budget. It is very much a part of the defense budget, and it adds up to that total of 4.4 lakh crore rupees that the defense budget consists of. And when you add that, then the capital budget actually declines from 33% to just 25% of the defense budget. So it's actually even less than what the committee sort of brings out. Now, the obvious question is, why don't they allocate more? And the answer to that is simply that the government is already allocating 33% of the national capital budget, 33% of the union budget's capital head to defense. How much more can they actually afford to allocate? If you cannot afford to allocate more, then you have to get on to the larger question. You have to take a step back and scale down your national security expectations. We want to portray ourselves as under a 2.5 front threat. We say that we are we need to be prepared for war against China, against Pakistan. But if you cannot, as a country, afford to fund that kind of expectation, then you have to scale down the expectation. In situations where the expectation is genuine, like, for example, during the Second World War, the entire economy of the United Kingdom was made over to defense production. Sort of factories that were building cars were given over to making tanks and so on. When you're faced with an existential threat, then you have to gear the economy and allocate the expenditure to meet that threat. But what I find we're doing, we are talking up the threat, but not allocating the expenditure to meet that threat. Now, this is a serious problem. You will always have this debate going on.
This is a serious problem.
We're not allocating enough. But can we afford to?
Yeah. Lot of tall promises. We're talking loud. We are challenging our enemies. But is there work happening on the ground as far as defense production and procurement is concerned? RJ Shukla, I'm going to get in Kalikesh Singh Deo, who was a member of this very committee, who has been a part of all those briefings where senior government officials from the Ministry of Defense, our senior personnel, defense personnel, have gone and deposed before this committee. Kalikesh Singh Deo, 2012, there was a letter from the then Army Chief VK Singh where the chief said India's security may be at risk as tanks are running out of ammunition, air defense is becoming obsolete, and infantry lacks critical weapons. Do you feel we have adequately addressed the gaps in our preparedness, or things have more or less just been the same since the UPA era?
Well, let me clarify that I used to be a member of the committee. I no longer am, so I can talk about the details that the report which was tabled on the basis of that. Yes, in 2012 to 2014, things were very precarious. As you mentioned, ammunition was running short. We were supposed to have a 15-day to 21-day supply of ammunition, which was barely there for anything. Most of it was, well below the 7-8 day sort of storage, which means that you can't really fight one war. Forget about a 2.5 war strategy. Your Air Force was dwindling completely. I think about 8 or 10 squadrons were out of service because of a lack of plane, and those which had the planes were obsolete. We badly need another 8 or 10 squadrons. I think largely these issues still remain. While we may have improved to some extent on the ammunition part of it, and some basic level of wear for the soldiers, largely we still haven't met our goal of 15 to 21 day of storage of critical ammunition, which is what we expect any war to last between India and whoever we perceive as our security threats. Now, secondly, I know we have a very big army, and we spend almost 70% or 60% of our defense budget.
Is there intent, Kalikesh? Kalikesh, is there intent when all these meetings are taking place and you had officials from DRDO, defense PSUs, Army officials, Navy, Air Force coming to this committee? Did you feel that there was intent on the part of the government to change things around?
Well, I certainly sensed some sort of an intent to try and ensure that we have ramp up domestic production and ensure that supplies are actually met. However, there was a big discrepancy in what the defense production sector of the government thought was possible and what the Army viewed was possible, Army or the Air Force viewed was possible. I think there are still some serious issues of cost overruns, about quality of ammunition and quality of defense hardware being made by the Indian defense production space. And which is why we see the armed forces resisting a lot of these localized domestic purchases. We still haven't got genuine, sincere transfer of technology on most of the high-end weaponry. We are still sort of searching for that, trying to source that.
Okay. Kalikesh, I'll request you to hold on. I'd like to get in our participants from the BJP and the Congress. This is the question to the BJP spokesperson, Narendra Taneja. Narendra Taneja, 16 members of this panel were from the BJP, and they've all expressed concern about the fact that 60% of our production is dependent on foreign supplies, only 40% is indigenous. Are we really moving towards indigenization? Can you brush away the recommendations, observations of this panel, Narendra Taneja?
Yeah, you see, when it comes to defense preparedness or the country's defense, we don't really think much in terms of Congress and BJP and all that. It's about India. Now, the question is that we inherited what we inherited. We all know the statement made even by the then defense minister 5 years ago, and people saying there were no ammunition, you know, for our armed forces. That was the situation. And also, if you look at the committee's report very carefully, majority of observations are about the time when we were not in power. DRDO and, you know, and a lot of other things. So, as I said, I don't want to, you know, go for this BJP Congress thing. Here we're talking to the country and overall, you know, role of defense in terms of India's GDP. Now, what we have tried to do is basically rework the architecture. So, it takes time. You see, it's not easy if you have to rework DRDO or to go for indigenous production. All that, these things are easier said. If we are putting in serious efforts before you start seeing results, it's going to take some time. I want to give you an example, for instance, you know, bringing, you know, like for instance, Rafale. There was, you know what Air Force was saying, and we have taken the decision, facing criticism, or even on the street, but we are going ahead because of the country's security. When it comes to the nuclear, when it comes to the shield, missile shield, we have decided to go ahead and build the missile shield for India.
This is a legacy. The mess that we see in the defense sector is what has been inherited. That is what the BJP is saying. Do you take portion of the blame today? Would you say that, yes, the Congress lagged behind? The UPA was in power for 10 years. They could have done a lot more.
Well, let me answer that in brief. Firstly, if the army chiefs are saying that India is not fit for war, and I'm quoting them, then I think it's a very disconcerting news. I mean, given the fact that, as most of the panelists mentioned, that India needs to be at all times in complete defense preparedness for, you know, for what you call as a two-front war. And given the fact that everybody knows about China's territorial ambitions, fairly manifested well in Doklam, or the number of, you know, the cross-border attacks that have happened in the line of control, I think India has to be at all times 24/7/365 ready for any eventuality. Now, the truth is that if a government at the end of nearly 4.5 years still talks of legacy problems, I attribute that as a public admission of total failure. Yes, there are always some things that you inherit which are strong. I will not deny that this is a work in progress. I agree with you. That end of day, have we been at an optimal military capability in terms of a military industry complex? Perhaps not. But, you know, at the end of 4.5 years, if your expenditure on defense, just one point.
It's hard to understand your point here, Sanjay.
It's not hard to, It's hard to understand the point. I'll explain to you with one perfect example.
The reason
if the government of India,
you, because there are so many of these defense contracts.
No, let me finish. One last point, and I'm done.
For example, if you talk about MDL Docks Limited, contracts for Project P-75 subs, P-15B destroyers, 17A stealth frigates were made in 2005, 2011, 2015, but deliveries are yet to start. Where does the problem lie? We can keep talking about Congress and BJP. We can talk about legacy issues. Where is the problem? And why is it not being addressed?
Are you speaking to me? Hello?
General Malik, you can take that.
Is that question for me?
Yes,
okay.
General Malik,
you see,
you can go ahead.
This committee on estimates has pointed out so many real issues. The problem is that there is lack of coordination between the defense PSUs, the ordnance factories, and the armed forces. That is one area. The other area is that whatever they sort of say that they will deliver, they never deliver in time. There is always a problem, sometimes a problem of qualities also. But there is no doubt that our defense PSUs and ordnance factories and DRDO, which has got more than 52 laboratories, and out of which this particular committee has recommended that 11 should be done away with, or they should be amalgamated with others. And they have expressed total dismay as far as the performance of these PSUs or ordnance factories is concerned. No, you know, Ministry of Defense is a very complex organization. The real problem lies that the people who are today managing the Ministry of Defense, both the politicians as well as the bureaucrats, they have not been able to understand the real problem and they therefore have not been able to resolve this problem. Everybody today realizes that the situation has been exactly the same from Kargil war when I said we shall have to fight with whatever we have. And today's situation is the same. We have not been able to. Yes, there are certain concerns which RJ Shukla has indicated. You have either to bring down the expectations of conflicts that we are going to face, or you have to, do something as far as the structure of the armed forces is concerned. Nobody wants to touch those major issues which only can impact. So there are these problems of the functioning of the defense PSUs, ordnance factories, DRDOs, etc. That is one side.
Right.
And the other is the way the armed forces have been made to expect that, look, you have to be ready for 24 by 365 days, and you have to expect any eventuality taking place all of a sudden, and you have a short period to resolve that.
Absolutely.
These are huge issues which, unless resolved holistically, we will not be able to resolve this problem.
Exactly, and probably this is what the army also told a parliamentary panel on defense very, very recently, that we're facing a severe financial crunch. We're struggling to make emergency procurements when China and Pakistan are carrying out modernization in full swing. RJ Shukla, Ashok Taneja, Narendra Taneja, we'd request all our guests to continue being with us. We are going to come back to this in just a bit.
Says large, but turns out small. Don't worry. PayPal can make it right or get your money back. PayPal.
Safe, hai?
Stop. Look there.
Ready for anything. The new feature-loaded Renault Kwid. Renault, passion for life.
All right, welcome back. We're talking about the state of India's defense preparedness in the backdrop of a damning report by the Parliamentary Committee on Estimates. And joining us right now is General VP Malik, Ajay Shukla, Narendra Taneja of the BJP, Sanjay Jha of the Congress, and Kalikesh Singh Deo of the Biju Janata Dal. But I'd like to go across to Colonel Shukla first. Colonel Shukla, we have been speaking about legacy issues. The Congress says the BJP could have done a lot in the last 4 years. Can the BJP spokesperson on this panel just say that we've inherited a huge problem? Yes, there are issues, but we can't address them in 4 years. Is 4 years too little?
You know, inheritance goes back in multiple ways. The Congress government, when it ruled for 10 years, had inherited a set of problems from the BJP. The BJP before that had inherited problems from another government. In 1947, we inherited a set of problems from the British. I don't think it is possibly rational to just keep blaming inheritance for all your problems. 4.5 years is a long time to fix issues, but let's not look at the issue of just blaming and sort of trying to pass the buck over here. Let's just look at what the problem is structurally. Now, there are two issues over here. One is how much money is available, and the other issue is, with the money that is available, are we maximizing what we get from it, or what they call bang for the buck? As far as money is available, any panel with a bunch of 10-year-old school children can sit over there and conclude that we are not allocating enough for defense, because defense expectations have been scaled so high that you can never allocate enough for defense. I think the answer for that is any committee that sits down and weighs in on whether we are allocating enough for defense or not should also be required to put into its report the allocation that it recommends for social sector, for defense, for education, for healthcare, for infrastructure, and they will quickly reach the conclusion that every government reaches, that there simply is a limited amount of money that you can allocate for defense. So this business of slamming, you know, insufficient allocations and so on should always come with the rider of how much would you allocate for defense and where would you take that money out of. That's the conundrum that every government faces while making the budget. And they all reach the same conclusion. Now coming to the other issue of whether we are getting enough bang for the buck, we certainly are not getting bang for the buck. And the answer for that is, why is successive government after government, not bringing in the private sector, not harnessing our IT ability strength, which constitutes half the cost of every defense equipment today? Why is all of this being done in such a slipshod manner?
Okay, Kalikesh, do you feel that the strategic partnerships model that the MOD has recently approved, do you think this is the answer? Because this parliamentary panel report that we are quoting from expressed concern about the role of defense PSUs. They are saying that defense PSUs are already there. Unless and until they are helping this model will not be successful.
Well, yes, since I was part of that committee, I can't disagree with the report in any way. I do believe that the defense PSUs are not living up to their potential. There's a lot you can do within that, which for whatever reason the government has failed to do. My main concern about the entire defense spend was that too little is being allocated for the capital expenditure. A lot is being allocated in terms of, revenue expenditure for the army. But the capital expenditure, to upgrade weapons, to buy ammunition, it's just too little is being allocated, and even that is not being spent. The conundrum of the defense bureaucracy is so massive, and I think General Malik alluded a bit to that. And the discrepancy between the defense bureaucracy that we have and the armed forces is so high, the distrust is so high, that nothing seems to get done in a jiffy. And I blame the government for that. And honestly, 4.5 years ago when this government came in, I was hoping to see a lot more allocation for capital expenditure so that they can make up, given their rhetoric about nationalism and national security, that they can make up the deficiencies in the armed forces. However, I find that even the money which was business as usual for them, even that money was not spent.
Kalikesh, I'm going to get in the BJP spokesperson here, Narendra Taneja. Over here, you had Kalikesh, a member of the BJP, and also General Malik, and also RJ Shukla raised this point over and over again. We're not getting the bang for our buck. We're talking loud, we're challenging our enemies, we're making a lot of big promises, but it's just not adding up on the ground.
Well, it depends. You see, Ajay Shukla, I heard him very carefully in terms of, inheritance issues and all that. But I'm sure he would agree with me. And he knows more about defense than I do. But he would agree with me. To turn around such a huge ship, if he thinks that we can do it in just a short period, I think that's probably is expecting too much from any political party. I'm being very, very candid here. The question is that we look at the kind of directions we are taking, investments we are making, for instance, buying these, missile shields from Russia, a massive expenditure, and at the same time, a big message to countries, China and Pakistan. So there are so many, an amount of money. You see, the government has put in place plans when it comes to role of artificial intelligence in defense preparedness, a role of robots in defense preparedness. These are not academic papers only. We are talking of concrete plans which are being put in place. And at the same time, role of private sector also, and the public sector working together as part of the Make in India campaign. So there are concrete steps being taken in terms of, shipbuilding facilities, submarine building facilities, infrastructure building facilities, and also, so I think we have to pay at the same time. Let's not forget, we are still a developing economy. Once we become a $12 trillion economy, we'll have a defense budget of $300 billion, whosoever is in power. But today we don't have that kind of budget because we are still $2.6 trillion economy. So we have to manage everything, and at the same time, but I want to say one thing, we are, in terms of defense preparedness, we are among the best in the world, and in terms of defense preparedness, the government has done the maximum that the government could do in, given the constraint and
all right, let's get in Sanjay Jha. All right, so Sanjay Jha, you've got the BJP saying that we've done a lot. And let's look at some of the issues that this report has raised. They have expressed a lot of worry about dependence on foreign imports. They've painted a very grim picture of the working of DRDO, saying that it needs to be overhauled. Its contribution to national security needs to be re-examined. Where does all this go?
Well, I want to make two very short points. I mean, India's biggest military adversary is probably China. And, if you look at China's defense budget is nearly four times our annual defense budget. So, I mean, these are matters of concern. And I can tell you that anybody who's done finance will tell you that if you grow your economy, you create more taxable revenues, then you're able to make appropriate allocations for defense and other sectors based on your national security threat perceptions. Clearly, the government has been myopic on that area. Now, you mentioned indigenization, which is like a focus on domestic manufacturing. And I'm pained to point this point again, that if you look at the Rafale jet deal, if you're going to take away massive opportunity, almost close to 130,000 crores of a manufacturing potential that Hindustan Aeronautics had, and you casually shift it to another private operator with very poor, zero defense track record, financially virtually bankrupt, set up in a hurry, and you believe that's going to be the partner for Dassault, I think you're clearly not being serious about national security. I think I'm glad you are having this debate in a very, kind of civilized manner, because I do agree with Taneja on this point, that we cannot play politics with it. But yes, there can be no denying that I think this government has taken the eye off what should have been a matter of grave concern.
We'll have to leave it there. I know Mr. Taneja is raising his hand, but we've completely run out of time on this panel.
One second.
All of you. We'd like
Just
to thank
give me 1 second.
Yeah, just 5 seconds, Narendra Taneja.
No, very quickly. All I'm saying is that Sanjay Jha said not play politics, but he did play that. I'm saying when it comes to matter like defense preparedness, please don't play politics. Please don't do that.
Yeah. Okay, we'll leave it there. Narendra Taneja, Sanjay Jha, Kalikesh Singh Deo, General Malik, Colonel RJ Shukla, thank you very much for joining us on this debate. There are some very, very serious questions that this report is throwing up on the slow rate of acquisition, the poor state of our PSUs, the poor state of DRDO, and the immediate need to ramp up defense expenditure. The sad part is, this is not the first report of its kind. Over the last 5 to 6 years, there have been many parliamentary reports which have said just this. When will our governments, when will the people in the Ministry of Defense get up and take notice? That's a question that we'd like to leave you with. Thank you for watching.